what I realized is like research is powerful and we need it and we need it to help inform our where we're going and what the solutions are. But it's the story that change everything. And the reality is that everyone now, all of you listening, I know that these issues have touched you. They've touched you personally, or they've touched people that you really care about. And so I found as we start to talk about them a little bit here and there, we open up and we realize like we actually have so much in agreement and we want a better society.
So sexual exploitation, it's a really wide topic, but people have a specific idea or connotation, like thoughts come to mind. And it is very evil, but not everybody sees the extent of the evil or certain things they might not think are evil, aka porn, for example. Can you describe for me the wide, the wide range of what you guys tackle as it relates to sexual exploitation?
Yeah, well, I will say, many people think like sex trafficking, they know about that issue and they feel really passionate and they want to end it. And I do too. But the reality is that we cannot end sex trafficking specifically if that's all we think we're fighting, because it's so connected to other issues like prostitution, pornography, sexual violence against women, or child sexual abuse. The reality is that all of these like icky, horrible things, they're really connected, they overlap, they reinforce one another, and you can't just attack one. Just a couple examples, if we want to stop violence against women, but our young people are growing up with a diet of hardcore violent pornography, like, are they going to treat each other with respect? Are they going to value one another? Are they going to understand and accept consent? The answer is no, and we see that playing out now in our society, as people who were growing up with this diet of hardcore pornography are acting out on it in real life, or they accept being a victim. Or likewise with prostitution and trafficking, just like usually sex buyers are not going out there to buy a trafficked victim. Like, they're going out to buy anyone for sex. They think they can buy access to individuals. Usually they're very vulnerable people. If we want to curb sex trafficking, we have to address prostitution. So, we're going to get into a lot, I think.
So it's all connected is what you're saying. It's a web, and it's can you describe for me the sort of continuum, like help our listeners, watchers understand what are some common scenarios that you see that, I don't want to say they seem innocuous, but it might be surprising that it could lead to X, Y, and Z. Like, what does that continuum look like from your experience?
I think I'll just share one example, that like a family that I've been in touch with recently, and some of this story's been in the news a little, but so their young son was playing Roblox, which is like a wildly popular game for young people. Like, they really specialize in allowing children under age 13 on their platform. It's growing in popularity with older teens and adults too, but tons of kids love this platform. The problem is that on this platform, adults can private message and talk with kids in these different fantasy land games. And so what's commonly happening on this platform is that adults are predators are flocking to this game too, because they know so many kids are there. That's what always happens when kids are somewhere. The predatory groomers also go there. So this young boy was targeted. I think he was 11 around the time it started. The predator encouraged him to go to Twitter. His parents had like great filters on all of the computers and stuff, but they thought, he's not going to care about Twitter. Like, what little kid likes Twitter? That's not usually the like social media app that they care. So they didn't block that
Right.
one. And so he was active on Twitter, and the grooming continued and continued. This predator got him to send nude images and videos of himself, and then used that to threaten him. If he didn't like send more, he would share that with others. And it escalated to the point of him meeting up with the boy, the predator, meeting up with the boy, taking him across state lines, kidnapping him when he was 13. This all just happened. Thankfully, he was recovered. But this is how quickly it can escalate. Like the predators are targeting and reaching out to vulnerable individuals online, usually kids, and then developing a relationship, gaining their trust, getting them to send nude images, getting them to send even more. Ultimately, sometimes it escalates to like real world in person violence and child sexual abuse or even sex trafficking. Oh, heavy stuff.
Yeah, it is.
Another role that kind of these platforms play is often they're using pornography to groom children, to groom their victims. But then also once they are exploited, they use the internet, these mainstream platforms we use every day, to also sell them. I mean, all of these teenage youth that I have spoken with who are survivors of sex trafficking tell me, they weren't sold on a street corner. They were sold on Instagram and Snapchat. That is where their traffickers advertised them, and it's where sex buyers then made the deal. So it's happening on
My
these big
God.
platforms that we're using every day.
So I totally want to talk about those platforms and like what you know about them and as it relates to big tech. Before we go there, just about the grooming process. So like I'm a father of 6 kids, and like this is something that you say that they're targeting, you know, individuals that are somewhat at risk or vulnerable. Is it only those types, or is the grooming process such to where they could get at anyone? And I'm sure they're breaking them down over time of just like, this is an impressionable time in the young person's life, and they want to be liked, and they're starting to learn about sex and puberty and feeling feelings. And I just am wondering what you have seen as to how the grooming even goes. Like, what does that look like?
Jed, I'm so glad you asked that because I think I need to be more precise in my language. I think I see that all children online are vulnerable. And I think when I say those words, people think maybe it's only those like without parents who are present or who maybe struggle with self-esteem issues or body image issues. And that's not the case. And while, many who do struggle with those issues might be more vulnerable, more susceptible, what we're finding online is that all of our kids are vulnerable. Their brains are not strong enough yet. They haven't developed enough to be able to withstand the constant barrage coming at them. And for us as parents to think that, well, I raised them well, or we're really active and present in their lives, they'll make good choices. I mean, when when you think about like the choices we as adults make, oh my gosh, how many times do you just scroll endlessly on TikTok? Because I do, and I
Yeah.
love that app. Or how many adults struggle with pornography, right? Because it's like it's drug. It becomes a drug to your brain. It's like, how do we expect our kids to turn it off when we as adults also are having such a hard time turning off these technologies? So often we've got these kind of tricky people is the term I often use when I'm talking to kids who are targeting them, sending them messages. And at first it's usually really innocent. It's like, hey, like cool game, you did this well. I like what you shared, like want to play this with me, want to buy this from me on the Roblox platform. And then it turns into like a friendship and then it
Mm.
turns from there. So all of our kids are vulnerable. That being said, though, Jed, we can't keep them in a box, right? Like our kids have to live in this world and they have to, they're going to be online because that's where our world is now. And I'm not advocating that we don't allow them in those spaces, but parents really just need to know so much more about what experiences our young people are having.
Yeah, and I know for us, like we have had experiences with 6 kids, and many of them are older now. Like we've had to walk through some of this with them, like when they discover porn or something like that. And it's like, yes, I believe that having careful filters and locking down the technology could be really important because, I mean, they're not trying to hand them a straw to a sewer and make it easy,
Yes.
right? Um, but at the same time, like they're with their friends and they're on the bus and they're at the school and they have sleepovers and there's just all this other life that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that friends will be like, "Yep, just porn is just part of their life," and they then want to show it to their friends. And I don't know if it's like something they're excited about, or if they actually are trying to get out of it themselves, and they're just sharing it with a friend. Because it could be all of
Mm-hmm.
those things that they
Mm-hmm.
are feeling pressures from. But I know for us, it was so important to actually like talk about it and warn the kids and just say, here's the problems, here's what you could face in terms of like how it steps from one thing to the next in terms of sort of the stimulation that's there. And the same thing with the predators, like, oh, it doesn't look like a predator, it looks like this, it looks like a friend, it looks like whatever. So I think that the parent, like you said it, with the parent role being so important, but then, like the parents have to be educated and believe that there's a need to speak to the kids on
Mm-hmm.
that level. You just were talking about the platforms themselves. Like this is, I know that for many parents, this is, they might know something about the atrocities that are happening on these platforms, and others are just completely in the dark. Like it might be terrifying to think that their kids just are completely allowed to be on these seemingly innocuous platforms like TikTok or wherever.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about how much does the platform companies themselves know about this? What are they putting into place? Like, what are they doing to warn parents, or like, do they accept any responsibility? What's that look like?
They're not accepting responsibility, and that's what I'm fighting because they need to. They largely, almost all of them, have not prioritized child safety at all, and they have, we've fought them for years, and so finally there's like some parental controls, some safety measures in mind, but it took like massive fighting and public shaming campaigns and getting Congress involved, and it shouldn't have to be that hard to get these big tech companies to prioritize child safety, especially when they're being built for children. I mean, a lot of them are welcoming and wanting kids to join and teenagers to join their platform. So, one of the things I argue about is like as a parent, I have 5 kids, you're beating me. Um, and I want to protect them, but I don't even have the tools to protect them because when I go to turn on the parental controls on Apple and it takes 31 steps and then it's like in 3 different places in the settings, like how can I keep up with that? Or, like this is no longer the case because we won with TikTok, but TikTok used to turn off the parental controls every 30 days, and like you wouldn't even get a
Wow.
message. So like you as a parent would need to set a calendar reminder, right? In 30 days, turn it on again. Thankfully, we pushed them to change that, but these kind of common sense measures for children's safety, like they have to prioritize it so that we as parents can actually parent. We need better tools. We can't keep up now because they basically have given us completely flawed tools that don't work. So that's one of the things our organization is doing, is fighting for change at that level.
Are you saying that the platforms know how engaging the not safe content is, and are you saying that they would turn off those parental controls because it was limiting engagement or onboarding or all of that? Do you believe that?
I don't know why TikTok would reset it. It doesn't make any sense for every 30 days. But I will say TikTok
It seems
now, after lots of meetings and advocacy, we brought parents, we brought kids to them. They have some of the most robust parental controls now, and we
good.
applaud them and we think that they cared. But what needs to happen is that there's like minimum standards across these
Yeah,
platforms for child safety. One of the my biggest points is adults should not be able to send private direct messages to kids that they are not connected to. Like that should be
right.
standard across these.
I completely agree. Tell me about, I remember hearing when we spoke last about Chromebooks. What was that story with Nikosi and Chromebooks?
It's another good victory, but man, it took like 5 years to have this victory. We went to Google and we said, Google, please most of our schools are using Chromebooks right now and Apple devices, but the majority of Chromebooks. And it's so hard to turn on the parental like built-in safety controls. And some school districts, they don't have really enough resources or support. Like they don't have a great IT person to figure it all out. So, and the parents can't figure it out in many cases when it's a networked computer. Anyway, we went to Google. We said, please turn on parental controls or the safety settings automatically for all of the devices in our schools. They said, no, 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 for years. And then finally, COVID and all of, and just instances of exploitation and exposure to really horrible things by our kids just started increasing significantly. We kept sending Google stories, and with one software update, all Google Chromebooks used for education all around the world had their safety settings automatically put on. These tech companies can do it. They can do it. Apple recently did the same. I told you it's 31 steps, but earlier this year, after lots of advocacy, they paired if you pair a parent's device to a kid's device through the family center, it will automatically turn on all those safety settings. But you know what? They're like not telling people about it. They're like whispering. Like, why don't we all get a message that this is a great new tool?
You'd think that they would celebrate it. And I mean, we have a very litigation heavy culture, and big companies, especially, or any company, is afraid of bad PR, bad, litigation. You'd think that this would be a no-brainer. Turn on parent controls, family controls. It still kind of baffles me to try to like figure out why did they want to keep it off, right? And so I scratch my head, and I don't want to go into too much speculation with you because I know you have active relationships with these companies. But I'm left thinking just like, why? It really bugs me as a technologist, as a company owner, as a father. There's like that just feels like a no-brainer, and I don't understand why it's so difficult to get that message through to them. But you have been able to get that message through to them, which is amazing. I know one of the things that Nicosi does is that you publish this Dirty Dozen list, or at least you have for years. Tell me what that is.
We just published it 2 weeks ago, so I'll send you a link so you can share it later. But
Nice. I'll put it in the show notes.
dirtydozenlist.com, we name 12 mainstream entities, usually companies, who are facilitating and profiting from sexual exploitation. Every year, it's gotten a lot of attention because nobody wants to be on this list. This year, we named Apple, App Store, for example, and the 2 days before we launched it, they were like texting and calling us, please don't put us on. We're working on it. We said, well, we've been asking you for years to make these changes. Make a public statement and we won't put you on. And they refused. So they are on. Specifically with Apple, one of the problems with them is they have really inconsistent app ratings. And they'll allow apps in the App Store that are really for adults, but they'll be rated for 4-year-olds, 4 and up. Or a bunch of adult apps rated for 12 and up. And so if parents are trying to use the safety settings in their devices, the safety settings are based on what the apps are rated. And so if you say, I only want my child to use stuff for like 4-year-olds, well, some nefarious apps are also being included. And, so that's the problem. Like they're giving us flawed tools and they know it. And so that's why they're on the Dirty Dozen list. But Chromebooks was on the Dirty Dozen list before, and it's the campaign that moved them to roll out that massive solution. So this
Wow.
has significant impact. We got like almost all hotels to stop selling pornography. We got Netflix a few years ago to roll out parental controls on their platform. And now it's kind of an industry setting that all the streaming services have parental controls because Netflix led with it after big fight. So it has a lot of success. And we invite the unique thing about the Dirty Dozen list is it only works because the public joins with us. So when we
Wow.
met with Hilton Hotels, for example, for selling just a ton of pornography and a lot of it was racist and incest themed, terrible stuff. They responded because through our campaign, they were getting 1,000 emails a week. And the CEOs, executives do not like that, right? They don't like to be called out on Twitter or have reviews made on Yelp about them. And so it's really a grassroots campaign that's driven all of this success.
That's awesome. It was going to be one of my questions about how people what they could do, right? What they could do other
Mm-hmm.
than, of course, parents need to lean into training their children and becoming aware themselves and walking through courageous communication with their kids, because it's awkward. Like, a lot of parents don't want to talk about this stuff, and they certainly
Mm-hmm.
don't want to fight with their kids about, how much device usage or what apps or all that. So I know that is something that parents deal with. I've dealt with it, continue to deal with it. But that was going to be one of my questions, is like, other than parenting, what can people do? And you're saying it right now. Join in grassroots, like, campaigns or movements that are actually actively calling on leaders of these companies and perhaps government or wherever to make a change. And you're saying more so than just Nkosi, it's like cultural movement, or like when the people rise up, then you see change. What other examples
Yeah.
do you have of that, where like people rose up and there was change?
Amazon, right? Like, can I even live without Amazon? So we've been involved with Amazon campaigns for a while, but one of the big ones was they were selling child-like sex dolls, like hundreds of them. It's ridiculous. They're used heavily by pedophiles and others, you know, to act out their fantasies, but so often there's a lot of research out now about this. They'll use these dolls and then they act out in real life on children. So there's no reason why Amazon should be selling or profiting from these. And after putting them on the Dirty Dozen list for that and getting people sending emails to executives, they scrubbed their website of them. So that's another big victory. Right now, we've got this. eBay is on the Dirty Dozen list this year for the same reason. They're selling many childlike sex dolls. eBay is also selling little spy cams, and you could use them for lots of things like safety and security, good, but the ads on eBay depict women in various states of undress, like they're showering, they're changing their clothes, and they clearly in the ads, to sell them, have no idea they're being recorded. And this is such a common thing in our society right now, where women and many individuals will be recorded unknowingly, and it's being uploaded in mass to these hardcore pornography websites, or even like to Reddit and Twitter and Discord. And we have a lawsuit right now. So we are also suing them, Jed. Yes, America is litigious, but nobody until just the last couple of years has tried to call out these big institutions for their role in exploitation until we started this law center. But we have a big lawsuit against Pornhub because there's a whole um, women's field hockey team who was away. They were filmed in the locker room without their knowledge, and these videos were uploaded to Pornhub and a bunch of the other big pornography websites. And it has impacted these women their entire lives. Like, some of them have struggled with deep depression, with anxiety, with worrying that it's going to keep coming up, right? And they can't move on. And these videos keep being uploaded again and again. So why is eBay part of this problem? So it's all connected. That's the thing people need to understand. But I don't want you to feel so overwhelmed, because we're winning. When we just, like, a
Yeah,
few of us reach out, we win. So
that's awesome. And I think this is the area of litigation that is absolutely needed. You guys punch way above your weight class. And, in the time of, I'll say it, technocracy, like big tech, big banks, big government, in this time where it feels like the people have less control, this is still a lever. This is still like
mm,
litigation that you guys, especially the litigation you guys bring, and then people rising up and backing you. It really has teeth, and it's really making an impact. You talked about that situation, like the women's field hockey team, and in that particular example, something that's happening without them knowing, and it's all image based. I've heard you talk about image based sexual exploitation. Can you kind of unpack that, and like, what are some scenarios? And this is maybe, I don't know if this is involved in grooming or but this, I definitely know of people that are sending images, like the sexting, sending images, and then it leaks, and then it's a nightmare for those that never intended for this to happen. But what are some scenarios you see, and is there any good news?
Yeah, is there any good news? Well, this is a form of exploitation that many people have experienced, but it often went unnamed. And so I refer to it as image-based sexual abuse, and it's broad and it encompasses like a really wide range of harmful experiences that usually involve the weaponization of sexually explicit images or videos. And it includes things like you said, like this kind of revenge pornography, this idea of like you made it maybe for your significant other and then they shared it above and beyond when you broke up or to brag about it. That's very common, especially with young people today. And there's also kind of what we're seeing too is that now with our like voyeuristic culture and where everyone has a camera in their pocket, when experiences of sexual assault happen, rape, it's being filmed. Very often it's being filmed and they're sharing it and they're uploading it to the pornography websites, but also to, I just can't state it enough, Twitter, Reddit, and Discord are full of pornography. I think we should call them porn sites too. They allow it and it's rampant. There's what I'm a victim of this, but like this deep fake pornography where they will take your picture, for example, and they'll put it in pornography so it looks like it's you when it's not really. And the emerging technologies now with AI is like happening so much more. And I believe, young women are used to like being catcalled on the street. We're used to feeling anxiety or nervous when we are walking alone at night in a parking garage. And I think the new normal now is going to be that all of our young women are going to be victims of deep fake pornography. It's happening in mass, especially with the AI tools available now. And so what happens then is these images are uploaded to these websites, and the websites have there's no requirement that they make sure everyone pictured is consenting or even of age, really. Like the pornography websites, Twitter, Reddit, Discord, they don't check those things. They ask if the uploader is 18 and if the uploader is consenting, not those who are depicted. And that's something that has to change legally. Like we need policies to be passed to change that. But also we need to require that these platforms no longer allow it. So one of the things I say to all of you listeners is if you're engaged in pornography, if you're an active user watching it, you are for certain watching image-based sexual abuse because it's all over those websites. It's all over. And you can't tell if it's consenting or not consenting. And so, you're also part of that problem of abuse as well.
So that's really interesting because you'll have the other side, the argument that's saying, you know what, these are adults and people can choose to make a living however they want. We're about liberty in this country. We're about freedom. But you're making the case that the situations that you've seen, there are countless, or maybe it's the majority. I don't know. What is that percentage of like non-consenting situations where or coerced, or like what are the stories where you've mentioned IBSA, image-based sexual abuse? Is there, I imagine there's also coercion involved or like some type of continuum there, but like it feels like it's important to dispel the myth that these are just consenting adults. What else can you say about that?
Well, I would say I can't unfortunately give you percentages because this is like there's no way to measure or research this. But I can tell you that, I know hundreds that this has happened to. And they've come to us and asked for our law center to help them get this content down. And so there's that. But then also there's this notion of I've been in this work and in this movement now for almost 14 years. And I've talked to probably 200 women, some men who are actively like working in pornography, and they've told me their stories, and they defend their, most of them want to still be in it, but they also tell me that in the course of being in the pornography industry, they were forced, they were coerced, they were tricked into doing stuff that they didn't feel comfortable doing. In many cases, that happens early on in their careers, and then they have to stay in it because they feel like they're nobodies. They feel like there's no other
Mm.
job for them. They feel like they're torn and broken because of that abuse, and then they stay in it. So I just have to say to you that, there is this idea that some of it is consenting, and maybe a very small percentage is truly consenting. But all of the individuals I've talked to experience force, fraud, and coercion in the course of making like studio produced pornography. And then there's also the impact on them. I mean, you can't, like, they're experiencing physical, mental, and emotional pain. All of those individuals who are used in the sex trade are experiencing that, whether they're consenting or not for that moment. And like, we're contributing to that lifelong trauma that continues on way beyond that initial act occurred. But then there's also the impact it has on the user, like not just those depicted, but the user and
Mm.
the people around the user, their family, their loved ones, the society around. It changes cultural norms. It changes your sexual template. It changes how you view yourself and others. There's a whole host of public health impacts facing those who use pornography. And we could spend like an hour just talking about those if you want to. But yeah.
Right. Story is super important to me, and it's part of my line of work is like exploring the power of story. And I just want to dive into a couple areas as it relates to that. One is what you were just talking about. It sounds like the coercion and the feeling trapped, these are people who have started to believe a story, or they were told a
Mm.
story, or they led through a story, and that has a tremendous, like a very big impact on their life and then on other people's lives. So this is a kind of a dark example of the power of story. But I wonder if we could kind of take it to a more hopeful place and talk about people who have had a really rough story, but now they're using their story to help others that may have been in that spot, or they've dedicated their time, energy, talent into really sort of making the world better as it relates to this, sort of leveraging their story. Do you have those? Do you have those
Oh,
examples?
Jed, I have so many. I have so many. Because I'll say when I first started in this work, I was thought like, oh, we just need the research. We just need the statistics and we'll win. And so my first thing I started doing was I like started this website and I compiled 100 research papers about all of this. And I thought the media will care, will win, will be done, right? And what I realized is like research is powerful and we need it. And we need it to help inform our where we're going and what the solutions are. But it's the stories and that change everything. And the reality is that everyone now, all of you listening, I know that these issues have touched you. They've touched you personally, or they've touched people that you really care about. And so I found as we start to talk about them a little bit here and there, we open up and we realize like we actually have so much in agreement, and we want a better society. And so I've seen like all of these victories I've shared with you, including like legislation that has passed. It's really come down to individuals came forward. They joined me in these meetings with executives or legislators. They spoke out and they told their experiences. And then we win. I mean, one of the biggest victories happened with a big law that we wanted passed. It passed in 2018. We fought for like 10 years for this law that would hold websites accountable if they knowingly facilitate sex trafficking. We brought law enforcement, we brought research, but it wasn't until victims of sex trafficking who were teenagers and their mothers came, they made a very powerful documentary called I Am Jane Doe. And then they came and they walked the halls of Congress with us. And that's why, like, almost entirely Congress voted yes for this legislation. Like, when do the Republicans and Democrats agree on anything? It was the power of these personal experiences that changed the game. I could tell you more, Jed, but help guide me because I'll
Yeah.
just keep talking.
Yeah. No, I actually really think it's super important to talk about those stories. Obviously, it is the topic that I'm really passionate about, and I want people to see the power of story. I want people to see that they're living out a story, that they get to look at themselves as a character and say, what are the right choices to make as a hero in the story. If I was reading the book of me doing X right now, or watching the movie of me doing X right now, what would I want to see that character do? And that you
So
can even
powerful.
use the power of story all the way down to that level of living out your life. But I love that example of taking people's real stories, that they were courageous and they were able to tell their own story, and the movement, the impact that could have, like in Congress or in some of these lawsuits that you're running. Talk to me just a little bit more about some of the lawsuits. I just love to hear the stories, right? You got to tell us a
Yeah.
few more
Okay.
stories.
Wait, let
What
me
are
tell
some,
you,
yeah,
I feel like I'm telling you these things that many people feel they can't participate in. Like, many people feel like they can't bring the lawsuit or they can't go to Congress. Let me just tell you my personal, like, just happened experience. So
yes.
I do this every day, right? But still, I am nervous to tell those really close to me about the work that I do. Mostly because I can't stop talking about it. Like, you can,
Mm,
if after I open my mouth, it's like just comes. So here we are. My neighbors all have young kids the same ages, and we had our kids together, and now they're getting to the age where they're starting to go online. They're having more access, and I'm scared for them. I love these kids, and I'm scared for my own kids' experiences as they go over to their homes if they're not safe. But I thought, oh, I can't be the mom that's like the crazy one asking what their rules are, but I have to be that mom because I know all of these stories every day. I'm hearing just like the hardest, darkest stuff. So last week I sent a text, right? I didn't even have the courage to tell them all face to face. I sent a group text to my neighbors and I said, can we get together and talk about projecting our kids online and like what our rules are going to be? And I was so nervous. It took me a week to send the text. And guess what? They all replied like, yes, please, let's do it. And one of them I thought for sure would be like the most like, Dawn, you're too crazy. You're too like conservative or something. Um, Pulled me out in the grass the other day and said, I'm so glad you're doing this. And he went on to tell me about experiences like his own little 8-year-old has had already and his nephews. And so they're coming over tomorrow for like,
amazing.
our kids will play. And the point is that it's our story. It's like being bold enough to tell even our like closest, the people closest to us. And like we become closer because of it. Our relationships are deepened and our communities right around us can be lifted. So I can get into
And
the
you're
lawsuits now.
touching on a really important part of story too, which is the vulnerability part.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
because it is one thing to do what you do and to be at work and to take the meetings and to do, but then when it's like your close circle, this is like away from work, and these are people that you see socially, and they could, you're thinking about what do they think of me, like how do they judge me, whatever, or would they judge me, and you did something that's super powerful in story, which is you made yourself vulnerable. And like there is no story
Mm.
without conflict. Like there is no story without conflict. When we watch TV shows, movies, whatever, they all have to have conflict. That's the thing that engages us. It's the thing that we look at
Mm.
and say, how are they going to get through this? How do they get through that?
Mm.
And so it's the same thing for us, like making yourself vulnerable. That is the meat of that story. And that's what actually gave it, the power, the oomph that it did, because then you were able to extend what you knew and in a way be a hero in the story of that. Although I know you wouldn't call yourself that, but I will. I think it's amazing that you guys are able to accomplish the amount that you do, being a small team. How can we help you? Who are you looking for in terms of partners? For sure, there's the grassroots side of things where people can rise up the way that you described earlier and send those emails. And I'm sure that you have a way to let people to know what to do there. What about other organizations? I'm sure that you're partnered with others. What are some organizations that you want to partner with, or that you'd like to actually see some collaboration because there's more power in working at this together? Anybody
That's
come
a
to
really
mind?
powerful. I have a whole list, but I'd say this issue needs everyone at the table, and we have to work collaboratively together. So yes, we need like a grassroots army willing to sign these petitions and share stuff on social and tell people. But also, um, we have to change culture, and we need individuals who are business leaders. We need individuals who are marketing geniuses and communications experts, and we need individuals who are policy leaders and who have the heart to go sit with the person who is in trauma right now and can help them get out of it. And then the people who can help us stop people from being pushed into the trauma, right? We need people at all levels participating and helping. So I think our biggest weakness as a movement, Jed, is storytelling. I think another big weakness is kind of using the creative and touching hearts and helping people see the bigger picture without just all the stats and research.
Right.
And
Right.
and also because it's so heavy and dark, how do we inspire and bring hope? And so because I listen to your podcast so I can be a better storyteller, I believe others listening are doing the same thing. And I'd say I think your audience is what we need more of. We need more creativity in our space. So,
Thank you for
all
that.
of you
Thank you for
listening,
that.
if you have an extra hour a week to help brainstorm, that's what we need.
Yeah. Okay. How can people get a hold of you at Nkosi?
Well, our website is endsexualexploitation.org, and you can send me an email through our account public at ncose.com. I think you'll put it in the bottom of the
I will. I will.
podcast. But thank you so much for inspiring us and covering hard issues.
Well, I was going to say it's a dark topic, and it's one that is scary and it's evil, and especially if you're a parent or whatever. But I have actually felt edified and uplifted and inspired from this conversation, mostly because you are a light in the darkness, and I really appreciate you, and I appreciate the team of what you guys are doing. And I would love to, use Votary Films and any other things that I'm doing to amplify your message and to kind of come alongside you and tell more of your story. So we'll brainstorm offline some more. Thank you
Yes,
for
we
being
are.
on the podcast.
Bye, Jed.